Welcome back to another chess.com game analysis, and we have some exciting new endgame innovative tactics here by these two players. As you can see by the eval bar timeline, the computer had no idea what was going on. Stockfish is totally confused. These two players operate on a level that is just beyond Stockfish, especially when it comes to the endgame. But as I think Tarash said, before the end game, the gods have placed the middle game. So we got to get there. We got to get the context of this end game, right? We all know how important context is in 2025. So we have a weird exchange French thing, and now we have bishop to d3. Bishop to d3, you might be thinking, well, doesn't that just block in this bishop with block in this pawn that I highlighted, and then this other pawn that I highlighted blocks in the bishop? That's true, but this is White's plan. White is saying, okay, Bishop, you are crouching tiger, hidden dragon. You are not going to go out and get developed and go out into the field before it is time. You will only go out when I say it's time to go out, right? You are the reserve troops. Okay, you're the reinforcements, all right? We're having no chance of this bishop just wandering off early and doing some premature attaculation or something. So okay, but now we have a check. That's also the best move by the engine. That's always the best, is when the check is the best move. Okay, castles. Black prepares to castle. We have a trade. Knight goes back. Black actually castles. Rook puts pressure on the bishop. Knight gets developed. Trade again. Queen puts more pressure on the bishop. And rook defends. Now, pawn to d3. Okay, now it is time for the bishop to come alive. Now it is time for the reinforcements, all right? Now and only now. Pawn to d4. Now you might be thinking, well, doesn't this just create a massive backward pawn right here and thus make both of these pawns super weak? Yes, but what you didn't account for is that this pawn attacks the knight. So now the knight moves, and now black trades. All right, so black got the knight trade they wanted, right? Clearly all part of the plan. And now black goes bishop to d6, winning a tempo against the queen, and also maybe eyeing this pawn in the future, although you really can't take it. Okay, now all the pieces get traded off, and we have bishop to d2, and now a great move by black. We have rook to e2, attacking the bishop, which is undefended, and then if the bishop moves, this pawn is hanging, right? Good move. And now white goes for the most diabolical five-head. Do people even say five-head anymore? Five-head genius, brilliant move that is incomprehensible by Stockfish, all right? Stockfish had no idea, and you don't either. You could obviously see here, but like, you might be thinking, oh, let's just go rook to d1, defend the bishop, and then king to f1, attack the rook. All the threats are gone, right? Why would you? And king to f1, like this bishop capture is a trap, because then this pawn moves up and the bishop gets trapped. So king to f1, obviously after you defend your bishop, is a really strong move. But white has a different idea. White is going for the master plan, rook to e1. All right, offering a trade of rooks. Now, this bishop is obviously completely hanging, okay? But, and this is why white, definitely, you know white's a poker player, because this is a bluff right here. You might be thinking, oh, free bishop, and if the rook goes back, then the bishop can just block, and there's no back rank checkmate. Yes, right? But that is the bluff, okay? That is the bluff. White is holding 8-4 offsuit, and the board is ace-ace-king, and black has ace-ace in their hand, and white's like, try me, all right? That's the bluff, all right? White is bluffing this back rank checkmate that doesn't exist, all right? And black falls for it, does not call the bluff. Black says, all right, let's trade the rooks. And now the bishop is recaptures. And now, if you look over here at the eval, I just have the eval bar turned off, but if you look over here, you see the eval. It is a dead heat. These pawns are weak, and black has 3 pawn islands, which is also really weak, as endgame's obviously better for white. But it's still very, very easy for black to get a draw here. everyone starts moving up, starts developing pieces. King starts moving up. And yeah, I mean, this is just a free pawn, you know, but Black's not interested in pawns, all right? Bobby Fischer says activity over material. You don't need to be taking these free pawns. Why do that when you can get your king active? And now, discover check by moving the king. That's always the Giga Chad maneuver. And now, okay, why attack a free pawn when you can attack a pawn that's already defended? I like it. Okay, pawn moves up. Now the pawn's pretty safe. We have this trade, and now this gives white an extra pawn island, and that pawn's going to be really weak. King to c5. The computer doesn't like this because now this pawn is pretty weak, right? This pawn can't support it because the king's in the way. But we're just gonna go after that bishop. See, not even punished. Not even punished. In fact, like, this move is so bad because, well, I guess you have this attacking the bishop, but there's still no defending this pawn. Bishop could just move out of the way, and now you can kind of defend the pawn, but it's still just super weak. So anyway, the move's actually not that bad, I guess. So bishop back to d8, and now the king is moving in. All right. White king moves up, and black is like, okay, you're gonna take my pawn here, but I'm gonna take your pawn down here. Bam, bam. Now pawn pushes up. King goes over here, attacking a pawn that's already defended when you can attack this pawn that's not defended. And obviously white can push it up and then head down. The bishop defends it, but it is a lot weaker because of the fact that it is blocked. So like if the pawn is immobilized, you know, it just becomes a lot weaker and easier to capture. Okay, so now we have a trade over here, and now black goes for the pawn that is weak. Pawn pushes up. Now bishop to f4, trying to attack the pawn from back here instead of over here. So okay, now king to c5, blocking the pawn, getting ready to defend over here. Also getting ready to take right here. The bishop goes back, attacking the pawn. And now pawn to f4. You know, there was all this action on the left side of the board, and white felt that the right side of the board was getting a little lonely with no action. So white pushes the pawn to f4. This accomplishes nothing to the naked eye, but as you can see, it's part of white's grand plan, because after this bishop takes, pawn moves up, and king goes down here. This allows white an amazing tactic. This pawn push was obviously to set this up, because now the bishop can go back here, and this is a skewer. You cannot move your king back here, obviously, because the king and bishop cover that. And there is no defending that bishop. King has to go over here or something, and then bam. That is basically white winning the game entirely. That's a free bishop. But that doesn't happen. White moves the bishop over here, defending this pawn that was already defended. Check. King now takes the pawn. Now black is going to push this pawn to a5. Computer doesn't like it because the king kind of needs to get these three pawns. But you know what? This creates this little fortress here. It brings the pawn closer to promotion. I mean, that move makes sense, right? Okay, king to d3. Could be chasing. Okay, now pawn's moving up. Pawn moves up. Now bishop goes, defends the queening square, and white chokes their advantage by queening too early. The premature queenulation. Oh no. This is not a good move at all, because here this is basically a draw, but black's actually the one pushing because of this passed pawn. These pawns are so weak, but black has to play accurately. Black goes pawn to a3. Okay, get that thing closer to promotion. And now the king goes to c2. No! 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 Black is trying to say, okay, I'm going to get a pawn, bring my king in, or get the pawn down to get a queen, and then after the bishop takes, the king's going to recapture, but you have to capture these pawns first. You have to let this pawn die. That pawn is a distraction. It is the distraction. It's not going to win you the game. You have to get these pawns, and then this pawn will win you the game, or this pawn will win you the game, or at least be a draw. King moves up, okay? Obviously, you need to be going towards these pawns. Same thing. Okay, king goes down here. Now, obviously, this trade happens, but now black is not in time to stop white. Grabs a pawn, and there is just no stopping this. This is a queen, and that is a resignation. And as you can see, that was just an absolute endgame brilliancy.